The conversation coming up next. Mr. George Norrie, this is Ian Punnett, Coast to Coast AM.
KFI News on the hour, on the half, and when it breaks.
I'm Andrew Carabella from the KFI 24-hour newsroom. LA County Public Works says department scientists are working on solutions to get rid of the smell along the Dominguez Channel in Carson.
Decomposing organic material in the channel appears to be useless.
Public Works Director Mark Pastrella says crews are going to aerate the water to help get rid of the stench.
Injecting air into the water, oxygen into the water, will accelerate the remediation and will ultimately reduce the smell and the annoyance of the hydrogen sulfide.
People started complaining of the smell about a week ago. The Dodgers win over the Giants means Governor Newsom has to make good on a bet with California's junior senator, Alex Padilla. Padilla tweeted he's looking forward to welcoming Newsom to L.A. to help get Dodger Stadium ready for the National League Championship Series. Newsom tweeted he'll start warming up for his infield ranking duties. KFI weather, sunny this afternoon. It will get to around 80 at the beaches to mid-90s for the Metro LAOC area as well as the valleys. High 80s and low 90s if you're in the Inland Empire. We lead local from the KFI 24-hour newsroom. I'm Andrew Caravella.
All lanes closed downtown LA. The northbound side of the 101 between the 5 and 1st Street. The southbound work till around 6 a.m. Southbound side shut down as well between the 10 and the 5 till around 7 o'clock in the morning. Take the 5 or the 110 instead. All lanes still shut down through Burbank, so on the 5 southbound between Burbank Boulevard and Olive Avenue. They should be wrapping up this closure in the next little while, but in the meantime, you are seeing sudden delays to the approach. And Santa Monica, the eastbound side of the 10 shut down from the McClure Tunnel to 4th Street until around 7 o'clock. KFI in the sky helps get you there faster. I'm Robert Kabucky.
Drew, you know what's really spooky during Halloween?
What, Dad?
Your old mattress. Because after 8 years, an old mattress lives with support and comfort and people like sweat, dead skin, and dust mites.
So if your mattress is over 8, it's time to replace during Sit and Sleep Fall Sale. Save $1,000 on select mattresses from Beautyrest, Instone, and Sealy. And get a $300 gift with any Tempur-Pedic purchase.
So this Halloween season, trust your sleep to Sit and Sleep.
For dreams that are sweeter, got a pumpkin spice latte.
That sounds good, Drew. Amco presents Bet You Didn't Know.
Bet you didn't know that your car's transmission is made up of 800 pieces. Also, bet you didn't know that Amco's fixed over 40 million transmissions. And a nationwide warranty.
Amco offers clean options for almost any credit situation. So it's easier than ever to fix it fast and pay it off slow.
That's Amco, AA, MCO.
We've all heard that you've got the right to remain silent, but have you ever really thought about what that means? It's the police literally telling you to shut up. I'm attorney Darren Kavanoki from 1-800-NO-CUFFS. If you're in custody and everything you say can and definitely will be used against you, remain silent and just shut up. Just make your one phone call to 1-800-NO-CUFFS, the leader in criminal defense. 1-800-NO-CUFFS, because no one looks good in handcuffs, unless you're into that sort of thing. 1-800-NO-CUFFS.
Here's what you need to know about the Pfizer COVID-19 booster. Not everyone needs one. Those who should receive a booster are 65 and older, long-term care residents, and those 50 to 64 with underlying medical conditions. Consider a booster if you're 18 to 49 with underlying medical conditions, or 18 to 64 with a high risk of COVID exposure at work. Only get a booster if it's been at least 6 months since you received your second dose of Pfizer. Find a booster near you at myturn.ca.gov. Brought to you by the California Department of Public Health.
What if everything you knew about your best friend was wrong? Like really wrong? My best friend is an international con artist who scams me and many others out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. On Queen of the Con, Jonathan Walton tells the shocking story of the phony Irish heiress he helped bring to justice. She seemed so nice when we first met, but she's the devil. Listen to Queen of the Con on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts. Brought to you by DuckDuckGo. Protect your privacy online for free with DuckDuckGo.
KFI, AM 640, more stimulating talk.
People like birds in the air breeze. They were born from the sky on that magical night. And in the colors of 1,000 sunsets, they travel through the world on a silvery line. children of the sun. Children of the sun. One famous down from inside.
To talk to Ian Punnett, call the Wildcard line at 818-501-4109. The first-time caller line is 818-501-4721. To talk toll-free from east of the Rockies, call 800-825-5033. From west of the Rockies toll-free, call 800-618-8255. This is Coast to Coast AM with Ian Punnett.
Little Children of the Sun, little Billy Thorpe action. It's been a while since I was a hard rock disc jockey that used to play that song all the time. And it was only a pain because the song was like 8 minutes. And it was hard to squeeze in sometimes, but we get a lot of calls for it. And yet it was about exactly what we're talking about a little bit earlier tonight. The Children of the Sun was about a type of an alien invasion. And that is how we will kind of talk about it in the first hour of Saturday night. Mothman Prophecies, we'll give you an update on this story just in time for Halloween. Really what is kind of one of those lingering, spooky, modern-day legends. You know, a lot of other legends, like, stick around forever, right? I mean, they can go back hundreds of years, but not the Mothman. It has a distinct beginning. And then it took a while after the book was written before it was turned into a movie with Richard Gere. But I think it's, you know, kind of forever now in our psyche, this very thought about the appearance of a Mothman before some major catastrophe, almost heralding it or acting as a marker of time, like sort of either a warning without coming out and giving it as a warning. Because if it had been, maybe not so many people would have been killed on the bridge there at Point Pleasant in West Virginia. But it's the kind of story that needs updating from time to time, and that's just what we'll do in the first hour. And then we do have an update. Some aspects of this Lizzie Borden story I'm sure you've never heard. We'll get to that in the main part of the show coming up tomorrow night on Coast to Coast. Your open line calls, if you grab one of those numbers we just handed out, then you'll be first up after Walt on Coast to Coast AM. This is Ian Punnett.
As we age, the fatigue and failing endurance we feel can't be fixed with more and more caffeine. Introducing a new way to start your day. Super Beets Heart Chews. They're a tasty treat that give you the energy you need, and they're good for you. No more afternoon coffees, energy drinks, and candy for a quick pick-me-up. Add 2 delicious plant-based Super Beets Heart Chews to your morning routine and promote heart-healthy energy for your day without a caffeine crash. Because Super Beets Heart Chews' unique clinically researched grapeseed extract promote heart-healthy energy and normal blood pressure as part of a healthy lifestyle. The grapeseed extract used in Super Beets Heart Chews has been clinically shown to be 2 times as effective at supporting normal blood pressure as a healthy lifestyle alone. Join more than 1 million customers, get free shipping, free returns, a 90-day money-back guarantee, and right now you get a free 30-day supply with your first purchase at noribeats.com or call 1-800-515-0053. That's noribeats.com.
This year, to mark 20 years since 9/11, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation is giving 200 mortgage-free homes to Gold Star and fallen first responder families with young children and catastrophically injured veterans and first responders. The foundation's chairman and CEO walked for the month of August through to September 11th from the Pentagon to Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and on to Ground Zero. The foundation brought back towers of light to the memorials at the Pentagon and in Shanksville, read the names aloud of all we lost to 9/11-related illness. And on Veterans Day, in a first for our country, the foundation is having a ceremony to read aloud the names of service members we lost in the war on terror. Help this nation to never forget its greatest heroes. Do good in their honor. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers at T2T.org. That's T, the number 2, T.org.
Open lines on Coast to Coast AM. We start off with Walt in Allentown. Walt, before you get going, let me ask you, how many times have you already been on Coast to Coast this week?
I haven't been on at all this week.
Oh, really? So this is your, okay, all right. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Where are you going to take us, Walt?
You may be thinking of Cornelius.
No, I talked to you enough, but I know you're a regular, so I wasn't sure how regular you were, that's all.
Professor Punnett, you make me feel young whenever I speak to you. I look forward to it. Even though I think I'm about 10 years older than you are, you make me feel like I'm back in college.
Good.
50 years ago, talking to my prof, so I always look forward to it. I just wanted to say that, as I was saying to Donna, the psychologists tell us about, the power of suggestion, and
right.
I think that applies to the masses just as it does to the individual. I think these mass sightings have to be taken, the mass UFO sightings have to be taken with a grain of salt. I think they can be compared to, the miraculous sightings of the Virgin Mary at Fatima and Lourdes. And you know what I mean? I just think you have to take it with a grain of salt. I'm in this camp with Dr. Seth Shostak and Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson and the late Dr. Carl Sagan. They obviously agree. Dr. Seth Shostak wouldn't be involved in SETI if he didn't believe that there was life out there somewhere. And but I think that the danger is in abandoning the what I call the skeptical scrutiny, the backbone of science. And I think, sadly, that's what the late Stanton Friedman and J. Allen Hynek did.
I don't know that Hynek you would ever have put him in the category of somebody who had abandoned science. In fact, it was science that led him to that inquiry. He was every bit the PhD that Neil deGrasse Tyson or others are, and he kept seeing a repetition, and that's what you look for in science, right? You look for those patterns, and out of those patterns you can start to draw some conclusions. It doesn't mean they're not subject to revisions, but I want to dismiss something you said, because I think when you're talking about Fatima, you're talking about Lourdes, you're talking about people gathering with the intent of having an experience. People weren't gathering in Tinley Park to see a UFO. So when you say that's like a kind of mass hysteria, well, it would be, what belies that is that it wasn't just Tinley Park, that it was a series of places along what appeared to be a kind of a line, and Tinley Park, where they caught something on video, is just part of it. And the fact that they were coming in without any coordination, the reports were coming in without anybody knowing that anybody else had called it in, would be completely unlike the Fatima or the Lourdes type of religious experience, right?
Well, when you go to Fatima, you sort of expect a miracle, or
right.
a Lourdes,
Okay.
Needless to say, when you go to Lourdes, you can see the crutches hanging, the thousands of crutches hanging.
Okay.
On, whether
that's my point.
Placebo effect or
Whatever, but that's my point. People go there for that. I'm not arguing for the legitimacy of those types of miracles. What I'm saying is that when you look up into the sky and you see something and you're in Tinley Park, and then moments later somebody in Orland Park, which is miles away, sees the same thing, it's not mass hysteria, right? It's not a bunch of people who are connecting a place to an experience like they would be at Lord's.
Well, in 1938, when Orson Welles had his hopes over the airwaves, about the landing in, I forget the name of the town in New Jersey, all over the country, people claimed that that they were landing all over the country. So, I think we have to just.
Yeah, but even that. Hold on a second. Even that, what you're quoting, is actually not true. Which is like, so I want to, they weren't saying, I see UFOs landing in my town. They were necessarily all over the country, people who, it wasn't a hoax, by the way. Remember, it was the Mercury Theater of the Air. It was a regular show. Up until this point, the Mercury Theater of the Air had been doing very high-minded repertory kind of things like Shakespeare, and they were kind of being encouraged by the network to do something a little bit more popular. So they took H.G. Wells's story and decided to contemporize it, and they told it, they changed the key parts of it, and they made it into what it was. But it was never a hoax. It was, they had commercial breaks, they stopped for commercials, they announced it was the Mercury Theater of the Air. Now we're back to our broadcast. So it was never intended to be that. It's just people that weren't paying attention got captivated by it and started to get panicked. But again, that wouldn't be mass hysteria.
Well, right? It was a form. You have to agree that it was what Orson Welles did was science fiction. I mean, it wasn't science fact.
Well, of course, but it was a play. It was fiction. It was intended to be fiction.
That caused nationwide panic.
It didn't, though, and this is a myth. It didn't, and this is why, I mean, first of all, it aired at different time zones, right? So it did not air simultaneously across the whole country. And so it came in waves depending on the time zone, just like a show would tonight that would run on network television, and they stagger the times for the time zones. So it was recorded and then replayed at a later time. But part of what you're referring to is actually what happened later on when they played it in South America. For example, everybody loves to say, well, there were suicides that night. There weren't any suicides attributed to it in the United States. There was one person, I think when they played it in Brazil, or they did a version of it in Brazil, there was a suicide. But I think part of the myth, oddly enough, you're passing along and debunking a myth, you're using a myth. So, I mean, I think that Orson Welles and others, again, they didn't create mass hysteria, and it's a good way to tell the story, and it makes people sound foolish, but most people are smarter than that. And when they're going to call in seeing an overhead light in Tinley Park, it doesn't mean that they're crazy. It doesn't mean that they're having some sort of, ecstatic experience. They saw something, and they told somebody about it. Why would we not think that that's legit?
Well, I think as a species, our history shows that we, quote unquote, we need to believe in something. We're the only animal with a conscience, with a consciousness, so to speak. And, man has, since time immemorial, has the only species that asks the questions, who am I, where did I come from, etc. So I think we're like, you can compare it to people wandering in the Sahara Desert, and they get so thirsty and so sunburned that they begin to see mirages of lakes and oases where none really exist. So I think that's part of, psychologically you can explain it that way.
Well, but we've all looked down a hot asphalt road in the summer and saw a shimmer that looked like a pool of water. So, do they see an oasis, or do they just see the shimmer that comes off of the ground with the thermal heat that's being released up into the air that causes that reaction? I don't think they have to be crazy to see that. They see what they see. But I mean, like, you have to remember in the first hour, my oldest son is on, he's 30. He is not a religious guy in search of something to believe in. And that's not his nature at all. He's never been that way since he was a small child. He doesn't spend any time reading the Bible. He doesn't identify as a Christian. From when I used to pick him up from Sunday school when he was a kid, he used to say, "Hey, Dad, do you believe this story we heard today from the Bible?" And I would talk to him about it, and afterward he said, I don't believe that story. And so I think the fact he was caught off guard by what he saw, he wasn't pursuing that experience. He just saw it. And so he reported what he saw. Isn't that exactly what we would want from a scientific mind?
Yeah, I think, you know what I mean, we have a consciousness. We're the only animal.
I get that.
The gentleman was talking about time, and we're the only animal that's aware of time. We're the only animal that's
How do we know that?
aware of birth and death.
No, you don't have any empirical evidence to say nobody else, no other animal understands birth or death or time. I mean, the fact that, as I say, everything's seasonal, that's exactly how I would think animals would experience time, much like how we did before the Industrial Revolution, which, you know, there's a season, for example, of animals for migration. There's a season for estrus. There's a season for all sorts of different things. I think they're aware of birth and death, and, you know, if they weren't afraid of dying, they wouldn't flee from a predator, right?
Well, that's instinctual. I can agree that the great apes, take like our nearest relatives, the chimpanzees, the gorillas, the orangutans, you could say that they have the flickerings of conscience. If you look at their interactions, they haven't written down the Ten Commandments, but they instinctually follow what you might say, quote unquote, a code of ethics.
Maybe, but I think interestingly enough, in trying to challenge other people on the basis of a lack of empirical data, you're also committing the same sin. You don't know those things. We presume, you could presume them, but I think any of us could look at an animal that would very much want to live and say that they have some awareness beyond instinct that says, you know, for example, my son has a cat who doesn't like to go outside now because he lives in the city, and every time my son wants to take him out, the cat's like, whoop, see ya, and he jumps behind the refrigerator whenever he doesn't want to go outside. So, I mean, I think that's not instinct. That's a kind of sense memory, and I think that we need to give more credit to other creatures and other people than I think you're willing to do.
Do you think when a hen sets on an egg, that the hen is aware that the egg will hatch into a chick?
Yes.
Do you think the hen is actually aware of that?
Yes. Why?
Well, because when I went to obviously a different college than you did. Well, when I had behavioral psychology in college, the prof told us that and on the bird's skin there are nodules, connected to the nervous system, and when she sits on the egg, it sort of alleviates the itch there, if you want to say. That the sensors on her skin caused her to lay on the egg, not because she doesn't have the intelligence to realize that there's a chicken there that's going to hatch. But she's sitting on that, because you can take a billiard balls and substitute them for the egg, and she'll do the same thing.
Well, I'll leave that there for now because I didn't take that course with you back in college, but I'll look into that. I think that's only part of the story, not the whole story, or you know, if chickens are that stupid, they wouldn't mind it when a fox gets into the hen house. All right, we'll leave it there. Let me get to Shane. But pleasure talking with you. As always, Shane is in Australia on the international line on Coast to Coast. Shane?
Yeah, g'day Ian. Love your program and love your ability to try to find out what the real truth is. My field has been over the last quite a few decades is looking at the generational social psychological conditions of the Australian social system. And I kind of help just basically addiction and I look at it through a modern Pavlovian. But basically in the behaviour